Kevin, we're in the middle of a COVID-19 pandemic crisis, which we're all dealing with in our own way. Prior to this crisis, the economy in regional Queensland, specifically up here in far north Queensland, was pretty bad. Can you give me a sense of where the northern economy is right now?
Yes, I can. And let's go back a step. You're absolutely correct. When we entered this phase, let's call it a phase of the crisis in February, March, we were already in a recessionary climate. Regional Australia has been doing it tough for a number of years, but in particular regional Queensland. So we weren't in a strong position to fight this in any event. What's happened is we had our economy shut down overnight. The tourism industry and the services industries associated with tourism came to a grinding halt. Within days, we had hundreds of people outside the Centrelink office. We're hurtling towards 15% unemployment in this far northern region, because we've got to understand the makeup of the region is essentially a service economy, and in recent years there's been more and more of the social service economy forming part of our region. So the real employment with people who are full-time employees has been in a decline. So what we have to do is recognise that, and we have to pick ourselves up from there. And we'll need to pick ourselves up there in a very constructive way.
Okay, well, given that, what do you think the focus should be on the local economy?
The focus on the local economy should be twofold. Firstly, we need to recover as best as possible the traditional industries that provided for this region, the bread and butter for this region. I include in that tourism, but I'll go back to tourism in a moment. So we need to focus on that. We need to focus on getting people into the region. We need to focus on lifting immediately as much of the clampdown or the lockdown as possible, to enable the local economy to start growing on itself, to establish what happens in the local economy, and to make sure that people understand that we're open for business. The other important thing is that we need to plan an economy coming out of this that is resilient, more resilient than the economy that we've had in the last 10 years. We only just recovered last year or the year before from the effects of the GFC. We're now back beyond that. So we're looking now at another decade of recovery to where we were at the end of last year. So it's crucial that we plan properly, and it's crucial that we bring into play infrastructure and policies that are going to drive the resilience of this region.
Well, talking about infrastructure, that's one thing that government can do almost immediately, is help us develop our infrastructure. What do you see our priorities should be there?
The priorities should be, very simply, for example, the one glaringly obvious priority is the convention centre. We've been talking about that convention centre now for 3 years. Everybody's saying it's about to start. Let's start it. Let's start it tomorrow. That's one. The other one we're talking about is a freight hub at the airport, air freight hub at the airport. If the money's there that the government promised, let's do that. There is also money that has been promised for infrastructure development at HMAS Cairns. So bring forward those announcements where the money is budgeted for and sitting in place. We can do that. It means that the federal government, the state government and the local government have to act in unison. This is also an ideal time for the Cairns Regional Council to start planning regionally. We have been calling for an integrated regional plan now for a number of years. That should be the number one priority. Not going out there with a wish list of stuff that we had last year or the year before that really will make very little relevance to the new economy that we need to create, the more sustainable economy. But there are projects out there. It's good to see that the council is working on a lot of the work in terms of local infrastructure with streetscaping and things like that. That's fine. But let's not overplay that. Let's basically get out there and create the economy that's going to drive employment, because we have to have employment growth here. We have to have people coming back to live in far north Queensland.
Kevin, you talked about the money for this, and you also mentioned the queues outside of Centrelink, and I can tell you that just about every business I know is holding their hand up for the JobKeeper program. So obviously there's going to be a lot of competition for money. Where's the money coming from? Who's paying?
Extraordinary competition for money. There is this feeling, if you like, this expectation that put your hand out and the money will drop into it. There are organisations in this city, for example, that are calling for federal government intervention, state government intervention to provide the money. It's not their money, it's taxpayers' money that we all own. And what we need to do is prioritise very carefully those areas that we want assistance, but not think that the governments alone are going to change this economy or change our landscape. We have to get in there with the private sector, partner with the private sector, provide an environment for them to invest and provide a way out in a combination of private sector money, industry money and government money. Because the paradigm, to use that hackneyed word, that we've operated here for the last 5 to 10 years of putting your hand up, and if you have political connections you'll get the money. I can name you projects here that have attracted federal and state money that have not a ghost of a chance of surviving the next 5 years. So what we have to do is be very deliberate, be very honest about where we're going, and to make sure that if we're going to use public funds, we use them wisely and we make sure that they have a growth factor in terms of growing the economy behind them.
Kevin, the main driving force of the Cairns, if not far north Queensland economy, has for many, many years been the tourism industry. What future do you see for the tourism sector at the moment?
The tourism sector is in a lot of bother. I mean, that's putting it very plainly. The tourism sector will rebound, but it won't rebound with the same preeminence as the economic drivers of this region is in the past. The tourism sector is changing. The investment in that tourism sector is changing. The competition in the tourism sector is changing. And if you think that people are going to flood the far north for the next 2 or 3 years, that's not going to happen, because every other part of Australia is going to be out there marketing and promoting their region. Tourism has to have a good look at itself. It has to have a look at its sustainability moving forward. It has to attract investment from the private sector. We understand that. The recent investments in Cairns have been good for the region. They're not going to, in terms of return, have a return of investment immediately. I mean, I feel quite sorry for Ghassan Abood. I mean, he couldn't have got here at the worst time. He invested on a wing and a prayer, for want of a better term, and he's not going to realise, I would suspect, any return on those assets anytime soon. And there are other investments. So we have to look at where we're positioned. The tourism industry here, TTNQ, need to have a really long strategic look at where they're going. And we can't keep trashing the Great Barrier Reef that we're connected to every day of the week, and another group of people out there saying it's all over. It's dreadful. That is nonsense. What we need to do as a region is really hammer home the great advantages we have strategically. So there's a lot of work to do with tourism. They're going to have their hand out a lot, and that's been their modus operandi. That's been their modus operandi for a number of years. We're in trouble, put the hand out. There's not going to be the money for international aviation. We're not going to fly planes internationally for quite some time. We have to look at how that airport's going to operate. You know, we're going to have a look at where we're positioned as an international destination, and resist this temptation and pressure from Brisbane to manage our affairs. We are a region that needs to grab hold of the opportunities to manage our affairs and not succumb to the dictates of Brisbane. There's far too much of that. And we need to be focused, and we need to be energetic, and we need to be quite deliberate and vocal about where we're going and what we want for our future.
Well, Kevin, you know, we've talked a lot about the fact that we're in for some really tough times, and it's going to take a lot of work to bring us out of this. Can you give me some ideas of the challenges that you see immediately facing us?
Yes, there's huge challenges. We have to position our part of the world coming out of this as a point of difference. We need to look at ourselves as Peninsular Northeast Australia. This is the Cairns and Far North region, and link across the top of Australia to the Northern Territory, and see that as a region that can attract a lot of investment, a region that can attract a lot of employment, but we need to change the policies. We need to change the policy mix. We need to bring in the opportunities of NAIF. We need to be more collective and deliberate in how we chase this. These pie in the sky attitudes about, you know, we've been here, we've been there, and we've got a message through, and we've got a message through here and there. Where's the evidence of that? There is none. So what we need to do is take a hard-nosed look at where we are. This is our great challenge. Be honest about where we are, and take a hard-nosed look at what is the future. We can go for the low-hanging fruit, but we've got to be aware of what's up the top, and we've got to focus on having a sustainable economy, sustainable industries, energy at the right price, connectivity with roads, ports need to be upgraded. There is great opportunity here strategically to link this part of the world to the opportunities that will no doubt come in time into the Pacific and north of us.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Kevin. And you know, just listening to what you've had to say this morning, you know, it seemed to me that we're going to need quality leadership more than anything to bring us through this. And let's just hope our leaders are up to this. Thank you for your thoughts. You've been very clear on where you stand in all of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex.